Hi, I'm Pam, and I would like to welcome you to the Live Authentically show. My team and I help other people step into their authentic realities via a number of different modalities. This show is obviously one of them. We also have a Facebook group of like minded people committed to spiritual growth and transformation, and you can find us at liveauthentically.today/FB. I'm super pumped that last year I released my debut book, Soar, SOAR, and it's on Amazon. It's available in audiobook, paperback, and Kindle. I am super pumped that today I have with me Lindsay Banks. Hey, Lindsay.
Hey Pam.
Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, you're welcome, lovely. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Super excited about our discussion today. Just so everyone knows, Lindsay is an award-winning author, truth seeker, and intuitive mentor, and she helps star seeds and light workers discover their unique gifts. Super excited to hear all about how you do that today. But before we jump into all of that, I like to start my shows off with the same question. And that question is, how do you live authentically every day?
Great question, Pam. Thank you. So for myself, I believe very much in speaking my truth. I feel that's a massive, massive part of being authentic. And for me, what that means is if I'm not feeling in a space, for example, to do interviews like these, or if something's come up for myself, if I'm feeling whether it's like emotional or just not in a great space, then I will share that with my clients and I'll be very truthful. I'm like, guys, I can't hold space right now. I've got some stuff that I'm going through, I'm processing, or whatever it is that's coming up. And like, can we reschedule? And the majority of times they're like, yeah, that's absolutely fine, no problem, and so I suppose for me that's one of the biggest ways of living authentically. It's about really tapping into myself and saying, right, how do I feel about where I am right now, and can I be there 100% for the interview or for my clients, etc.
I love that. And I think that's so important to really tap into our feelings. I think that we're so accustomed to checking in with everybody else all the time, right? How are you doing? How are you doing? But how often do we really stop and check in with ourselves, right? How am I doing physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally? And as a follow up to that, what do I need to do? What do I need right now in this moment, right? If I'm tired, maybe I need a nap, right? If I'm hungry, maybe I need to make myself a nutritious salad. If I'm overwhelmed, maybe I need to just unplug and set aside some quiet time for myself. So I just think that's so important to get into that mindset of and that routine and adopt those behaviors of checking in with yourself and then giving yourself what you need because we can't, you're so right and so wise to do that and to make those calls during the day about, am I bringing my best self forward or not? Because, if we're not 100%, then we aren't in a position to serve other people at the highest level. And I think that's just, a perfect exemplification of authenticity because you're being honest and open and authentic by saying, you know what, I'm not 100% and I can't serve you to the best of my ability. So let's reschedule, let me realign and I'll come forward when I am able to serve you at the highest level.
Yeah, and I think the other thing as well is in terms of sort of like my work and my business, I'm very much sort of like, okay, again, it's like, what do I feel like doing today? Do I feel like going live on YouTube? Do I feel like doing some writing? Do I feel like, what am I in a creative mood? Do I just want to use Canva all day and create awesome presentation? And for me, I find that actually really helps with my business and my work. So rather than saying, right, next Monday, I'm going to sit down and write a chapter, for example, it's more, okay, on that Monday, how do I feel? Do I feel like writing today? Or do I feel like being more communicative and speaking with people and sharing a message? And I think that for me works really well.
Mhm.
So, because then I don't beat myself up about not doing anything, because I'm very much sort of like allowing, I call it upstairs, allowing upstairs to guide me as well as allowing my own sort of intuition to guide me as well.
Yeah, and intuition was actually the word that was kept coming up while you were talking, just
Mhm.
following those intuitive hits, right? And giving yourself the license and the grace and the latitude to deviate
Yeah.
from how you think you should be doing something, right? So many times we lock ourselves in to certain ways of doing things, right? Conditioning, patterning, right? I should be writing on Monday or I should be doing this a certain way. I always tell people like challenge yourself, abandon the should be's for a little while, set those aside and start asking yourself, how do I operate organically? When am I in that flow state, right? When do I receive those intuitive hits, that creative energy, coming directly from source? And pay attention to that, because that's when we get our most creative work, our most connected work that can add value in the world. So I love that you have a very fluid, organic nature to the way you work.
And it's interesting that you use the words, should be, because this was something that came up for me a couple of years ago, and I kept saying it to people, and I didn't know where it was coming from, but I just started telling people, look, if you eradicate the word should from your vocabulary, it releases any guilt about anything that you should have been doing, so it was quite challenging at first, even for myself, to remove it. But I've managed to remove it from my own vocabulary. So I never use that word anymore. And it means I just don't feel guilty about anything, because I never should have been doing something else. I've been doing what I'm meant to do in that moment.
Wow. I'm literally getting spiritual chills as you say that, because I've actually never spoken about that I've never done that little soundbite before about, the shoulds on a podcast before, but I just felt really inspired to go there and because of it, you're able to share this wisdom. And I think that is so powerful for all of our viewers and listeners to think about that. Where are you carrying the burden of shoulds in your life, right? Where are you, whether they're self-imposed or whether they're from the external circumstances or people around us, and releasing yourself from those and giving yourself, again, the grace and the latitude to do things a different way. So I'd love to talk a little bit about your journey to authenticity. Is there a particular pivot point or aha moment or awakening where, you really started to make the shift from inauthenticity to authenticity?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I just had my palm read this morning by a friend, and we're talking about this going from this. She said, I had this double lifeline. One was really weak, but one felt really strong. And she said, it's as if you've jumped from this weak life force and vitality to this stronger one. And I said, that's really interesting. Says, I wonder if it's because of my divorce that I went through a few years ago, because prior to, I lost one of my best friends to cancer on my 36th birthday. And that sort of, for me, was a real emotional trigger. It's like, I just remember sobbing, and I was like, I can't remember the last time I cried. And on the flip side, that I was like, I can't remember the last time I'd laughed. And I'd sort of become really emotionally numb to life and everything that was going on. And I was definitely living like an inauthentic life. I wasn't allowing myself to be me. I would suppress my emotions. I was keeping myself small. And yeah, it's sort of the bereavement, I think, sort of like then started this snowball effect, which ended up with myself and my ex-husband starting to open up and be like, right, this isn't what we wanted, this isn't where we're meant to be. And that, I suppose, triggered my sort of awakening. And it was only when I sort of moved out of the marital home with the children that I started realizing what it was like to be me again, and to learn how to really speak my truth and have honest conversations. And it's not easy, when you first start doing it, because initially it's like, oh, well, if I say this, you're thinking about that other person. How's that other person going to respond or react? But gradually over time, I found the more that I started to practice it, the more that I knew that the words I was saying to whoever it was were coming from a place of love, and they were coming from my heart. So I never meant, if I said something, it was never said with malice or bad intentions or anything like that. And if someone responded or reacted, for me, that was also a learning experience, because it was like, okay, so if they've reacted in a way to me speaking my truth and they don't like it, is that because of what I've said to them? Is it because I've triggered something else in them that they need to work through? But I would never take back my words, because I knew that they were coming from my heart. And I found that as I started to do that and speak my truth, that I learned to set boundaries, to say no to people, when previously I'd been a people pleaser, and I'd been a fixer, and I was always saying yes. And I was like, oh yeah, I'll do this, I'll do that, I'll do that. And ended up with this massive burden, on my shoulders, where I was like, I don't have any time for me because I've said yes to everybody else.
Mhm.
So learning to set those boundaries sort of ended up becoming a side effect, I suppose, of learning to speak my truth, and becoming more authentic.
Yeah, that is such a huge piece of the journey. Like you said, setting boundaries and learning to articulate those and allowing it to shake out however it's supposed to shake out. I think so many times we're unwilling to assert our voice or speak our truth, speak up because we're scared about how other people are going to react, right? What will they think? Will they
Yeah.
judge us? And I know I went through that in the beginning when I was first shifting to being plant based. I was
Mm,
really talking about it a lot in the beginning because people would make jokes here or there, whatever. And then finally I was like, you know what, this is just who I am. You don't
yeah.
like it, you don't have to accept it or whatever. But interestingly, then a lot of the same people who were the naysayers and who were kind of met with, who met me with a little bit of criticism early on came back and were curious, right? We're curious. They were the ones asking the questions. So it's just so important to stay aligned with who you are and keep speaking your truth and allowing. I always say when people come and go and kind of fall out of your life, there's going to be a natural attrition as you rise, right? As our evolution progresses and as our vibration raises, it really is. We oftentimes take it personal because on the surface, it seems like it is very personal, but underlying it all, underneath it all, really is a vibrational undercurrent. They're really vibrational underpinnings. And those misalignments will be exploited by speaking our truth. And that's okay. So I think that's a big piece of the journey is just learning to flow with that. So I'm wondering if you've experienced that on your journey where you have outgrown, outpaced certain people. Again, not to make this a competition or who's better than the other person, but just you can speak about that a little bit about your experience with sort of healthy disconnections or attrition during the spiritual evolution process.
Yeah, so it's interesting because I always live by sort of like that little prayer which says, friends come into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime.
Wow.
And, you know, part of like that ego side is when someone comes into my life, I'm like, why are they here? I want to know, what's it going to bring? Is it for business? Is it for like, is it romantic? Or and then my ego, like my mind kicks in and goes, you don't need to know everything, Lindsay. Just surrender and let it flow. And I'm like, okay. So there is sometimes that battle, but it's
Mhm.
like sometimes there is that as you grow, and as you start this spiritual journey, that like you said, there are these energy misalignments, and either someone has chosen to grow with you during this time or they haven't, and that's okay. And I think I remember like even when I was sort of like a kid in the 1980s, I remember there was this real sort of stigma around people getting divorced.
Mhm.
And even when I went through my divorce, there was that shame, and it was like, oh my God, I'm splitting my family up. And this illusion of being like with someone forever. I was like, what's wrong with me? Why can I not be with this person for longer? So there's a lot of questions to be asked around, like for myself, and self-reflection around getting divorced, and it really exploring sort of the concepts of marriage and relationship. But then, yeah, this knowing has really helped because then I got into a relationship with another guy. And as soon as I met him, I was like, I knew that I wasn't going to be with him forever. And I even like, must be really hard on him, but I even told him, in the beginning, I said, look, I know we're going to be together for a while, but I don't know how long it's going to be. I know it's not going to be forever.
He was probably like, whoa, how do you know all this?
Exactly. Yeah. But, and when we sort of like detached about 14 months later, but again, there was such massive lessons throughout this relationship.
Yeah.
And it's the same with friends as well. Every person that comes into your life, either they're meant to bring you something or you give them something. And just because you detach or because you divorce or the relationship ends, it's not necessarily that a reflection on you as a person. It's more to do with the lessons that we're meant to learn and to derive from that person, and vice versa as well.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I'd love for you to talk a little bit too, on a related note about releasing judgment, because you talked
Mhm.
about, the stigma and what will other people think and what images does society cast, et cetera. They're not only limited to divorce, but you talk just about judgment in general and about how this journey really is about aligning with who we are and what feels best for ourselves and not worrying about what other people think of us.
Yeah, so for me, I feel like a lot of judgments that we have as human beings, they're not necessarily ours. It's come from, like, TV, or it's come from parents, etc.
Yeah.
And for me, working through this, one of the best questions that I've recently sort of come across is like, okay, is this my judgment or is this someone else's?
Yeah.
And often it's someone else's. It's either sort of like from my parents, or it's from a grandparent, or from a teacher, or from the TV,
Mm-hmm.
and so I suppose for me, I've always been very sort of like empathic, and quite compassionate towards others. And I've never judged anyone, based on the color of their skin or anything like that. I wasn't brought up like that. But it made me laugh because I thought that, I've released all judgments towards other people, I treat them as compassionate beings, etc. And then this one day I was driving my car along a road and I saw this, it was this really bright pink mini coming towards me with these like big white daisies all over it and fluffy dice. And in my mind, I just got, oh, I bet that's a young girl in her 20s, a bit of a hippie driving that car. And as I drove past, it was like this 6'2" massive bloke driving the car. And after, I was just laughing afterwards because I was like, okay, duly noted. I judged. I'm really sorry. And I think it's recognizing, isn't it? It's like when we do make a judgment of someone based on either what they look like or what they have, it's like it's being aware of it and asking ourselves the question, being like, oh, okay, so I've just judged that person, and why did I think that? Was that something that is in my mind, or is it something that I've been taught over the years? And so I think there's that side of it, and then there's the other side, which started talking about around speaking their truth and everything. And I remember when I did my first YouTube video about the Palladians, and I was sat here, and it's like the universe has that way of like pushing you a bit and going, come on, you can do it. And I remember sitting here thinking, oh my God, I'm going to be sharing with people that I don't know the fact that I'm speaking to these multidimensional beings. And I've gone now beyond the spirits, and beyond, I'd spoken to people that I could speak with spirits and I could connect with spirit guides and everything else. Yeah. But for me, putting myself out there and saying, okay, I'm channeling the Palladians, I did feel as if like, what are people going to think, but at the same time, I was very aware that there are other people out there who have had these interactions as well and these experiences, but may not be feeling brave enough to say. So I feel like part of my role, what the universe kindly does, is says to me, right, this is what you need to do, Lindsay. So then I've already sort of created that space that's then safe for other people to go, you know what, I've had that experience as well. Or they then like message me afterwards and say, I've met aliens, I've had aliens visit my room, or I've spoken with the Palladians, but I've never been able to tell anyone because nobody else has said anything. And I feel as if it's about bringing the unknown out into the known and creating those spaces for people to be able to say, I'm not going crazy. If Lindsay can speak about the Palladians and everything else, then it's safe for me to do so as well. And that's sort of like, that's where I'm at with my judgment. It's like, I have to do it. I have to push myself out of my comfort zone in order to support others.
Right. And I know when we're shifting into unexplored spaces and expanding like that and contemplating or fearing judgment, it's just really important to remember that people in your near circle may initially judge you, but the world is just so expansive. We say there's 7.6 billion people in the world. So no matter what your truth is, no matter how outrageous it may seem at the time, there will be other people to meet you and greet you there. There will be other people to rally with you. There will be other people who are interested in you, who want to hear your message, etc. And that's where the expansion happens, right? The expansion happens when we move out of our tight, closely knit circle and explore the world and connect with those people.
Definitely. Yeah. And, I think for me, like over the last sort of like year or so, just using the internet, like it's such a massive gift for us. I know it also has its downsides at times, But in order, like you said, to be able to connect with so many other beings on the planet and around the world, I think it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So speaking of connecting, I would love to dive into, I'm so fascinated by your ability to channel and connection with the Pleiadians and all that. I would love to hear more about that, about when you first became aware of your abilities, how you channel, in what different modalities or forums do you share the information that you receive, et cetera. So I'll just turn it over to you to kind of talk to us about channeling 101.
Okay, so I started writing a book in 2018, which was called A Gentle Hug for the Soul. And what I would do when I was writing that book, because I was conscious that all the tools that sort of helped me go through my divorce, I'd spent 10 years learning them and putting them into practice. So I wanted to share these tools in the book. And what happened initially was when I got stuck, I would just take myself outside, do a little meditation, and I would just say, like I would just say to upstairs, as I call it, what do you want me to write? And I would start writing little paragraphs about love or about beauty or about gratitude. And it wasn't massive stuff, but the words were just so beautiful, and they were definitely like coming from another space and not me. But I didn't realize I was actually channeling. I thought it was, oh, my spirit guide is coming through and helping me write the book. So I put some of these pieces into the first book, and then I'd gone to the spiritualist church to work on developing my mediumship because I was aware that I could do it, but I wanted to have more formal teaching. And I went to support a friend as well. And the first few times I went, I was getting spirits through who passed from suicide. And the images were so detailed. So I was able to sort of like share the stuff that was coming through in that way. And I think because, like I said, I felt like the universe have always been like pushing me a bit, going, just try that, just try that. And I remember sitting in circle one day and they said, well, right, we're going to do some automatic writing. So we did this meditation, and all I got in my mind was, what was it? Thou art, thou art. And I'm like, who says thou art these days? You know, it feels really old fashioned. And then I ended up writing this poem, which was all written in Old English. And when I asked, I said, who's helping me write this? I got William Shakespeare. And I was just like, my mind was just blown at the time. I was just like, I'm channeling William Shakespeare. And I said to him, I said, why are you coming through? What do you want to share? And he said to me, he said, oh, in all these paintings, Lindsay, he said, people painted me and I looked so serious. He said, but I had a brilliant sense of humor and I was always laughing. And I was just like, oh, wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I remember asking in the church, you know, I was like, can someone help me to develop these channeling skills? Because I think there's something there. But unfortunately, there was no sort of teachers and no one really knew anyone. So I just started doing it by myself. I would sit and meditate and just start asking for these words to come through. And in 2019, I was channeling a lot about the events that happened in 2020.
Okay.
And I was being told about the collapse of the patriarchal system and the collapse of the legal system and the education system and everything just coming down. And I remember thinking, how is this going to happen? But they wouldn't tell me that bit. They were just giving me sort of like snippets. And so what I started doing then was I had these writings and I was like, they feel so apt now. So I started sharing them on my YouTube channel. And I've played with a couple of them, you know, especially more like poems. So I did one recently called You Are a Powerful Being, which was a reminder to everyone that the power is within them. And with that one, I played with it. I did a bit of a video, and rather than me just sitting here talking from my book, and that was quite fun to do. And then last year went, obviously it was a bit of a crazy year for everyone. But when I was doing like yoga or if I was in the shower, I started getting all of these past leaders coming through. So the first one, I'm trying to remember who the first one was. I think the first one was Abraham Lincoln. And he came through and he was very much talking about, you know, how the world had to go back to being run by the people and for the people and of the people. And I was like, and then he started sharing his story about, excuse me, why he'd been assassinated. And all these different past leaders started coming through to share their thoughts on leadership. Joan of Arc came through. She took the mick out of me. I'd just gone for a walk. And as I was coming back from my walk, I started singing the French national anthem in my head. And I was like, who's this? Why am I singing the French national anthem? And when I came home, I just started writing, and I just immediately got Joan of Arc in my mind. And she was sharing with me just, she was saying, oh, viva la revolution. She was like, the revolution's coming, Lindsay, you know, you need to take your part in it. And it's about leadership and strength and speaking your truth. She was very much an advocate of that as well. And then she said, she went, you didn't even know I was French, Lindsay. She said, but your geography and your history doesn't matter because your strengths lie elsewhere. And I was just, I was just laughing at that. But yeah, so the way that I channel is, you know, I become aware, first of all, of the presence of a spirit generally. And then I will sit down and I ask them questions in my mind, and I just write down whatever's coming into my mind. I had Winston Churchill recently. I've had Princess Diana. So yeah, there's been quite a few, but I think it's just important that when you are channeling, it's about knowing who it is that's coming through. And with the Palladians, for example, generally their messages are very loving and very sort of honestly, like, of the light, basically. And their energy feels quite different to a spirit. So they feel like they're on a higher vibration, whereas the past leaders who were coming through felt on a different level.
Okay.
And then I think it's about having an open mind as well. So there was one time, but always asking questions in your mind, because one time I was in a room with 12 people and I was like, who are you guys? Where am I? And I just got, oh, this is the Galactic Council, Lindsay. And I was like, I didn't even know we had a Galactic Council. I was like, tell me more. So they were sharing some snippets about what the Galactic Council is and how they oversee everything that's going on, not only on planet Earth, but in the various star systems, etc. And they all came together in agreement that they would work together to look after all the different planets, etc. So, yeah.
That is fascinating. So when you channel, then when you see these spirits, these beings, do you actually, I mean, when you get their messages, do you hear it, or how does that actually work?
Yeah, so sometimes, so generally it's like watching a movie in my mind with like subtitles. So it's like I can see the words and I can I'm conscious of them. So yeah, so I did writing, and then one day I had John Lennon come through, and his energy just made me feel like a giddy teenager. And I thought, I can't even just sit down and write this. I just need to go straight away and do a video.
Okay.
So with him, I sat in front of my video and I was like, right, come on then, just give me the words and I'll share them. And that's sort of what I did. So I just tuned in and I was like, right, what do you want me to share? And he wanted to be Christmas #1 last year, bless him, with was it Imagine? Yeah, I think it was Imagine. But I think it was George Michael ended up becoming #1. But he was so excited, his energy was so exciting. And sometimes so I was doing, initially I started off doing like angel card readings and tarot card readings for the collective on my channel. And then upstairs were like, right, you need to do this now without the cards, Lindsay. And I was like, oh man. So I would sit there and just take a deep breath and go, right, so this is what I feel is coming up this month. And then I would just allow them to sort of give me the words and trust that what was needed to be said would then be said in that sort of video. So yeah, I also channel. I've just started doing some chanting with some of my clients, and channeling my spirit guide. So I allow him to use my voice to make certain words, when I'm doing healing work as well, which is interesting.
It's fascinating. Have you ever channeled anyone who made you feel like uncomfortable or unsafe?
Yeah. So towards the tail end of last year, it was really interesting. I've been speaking to a friend of mine who had struggled with some sort of negative entities. And as I was doing yoga, it's always when I'm doing yoga in the shower, I suddenly, and I don't know if you guys know him over in America, but I suddenly had this image of Jimmy Savile. You know Jimmy Savile?
I
He
don't.
was oh, so basically he was a chap, he was a well-known paedophile in the UK, but he wasn't exposed until he'd been on British television for like 20, 30 years, and he'd been around a lot of children. And it wasn't until after, I think it was after his passing, that people started coming out and saying, actually, he abused me. So he was literally next to me whilst I was doing yoga, and he used to smoke a cigar on TV as well, and I could smell his cigar smoke. And I just basically told him to F off. I said, I do not want your energy in my space. I said, I will not communicate with you, and I do not want to speak with you. I said, you need to leave now. And he went.
Okay.
So thankfully, he's the only sort of negative entity, if you like, or someone that I didn't want to communicate with that came into my space. And again, I shared a video about that because I was like, just because they come into your space doesn't mean that you need to communicate with them. You know, we have free will. It's just as if, like, if someone walked in your house and you didn't want them in your house, you would ask them to leave, or you would tell them to leave, depending on the character of the person. And it's the same with spirit. If you don't want to communicate with someone, you know, you can say, look, I'm not communicating with you. I don't want you to communicate. And that's about setting those boundaries with the spirit world as well as in our physical world.
Mm-hmm. Now, is channeling something that only a select few chosen people on this earth can do, or is channeling something that everyone has the ability to do if they, number one, have the belief, and number two, go through, the motions and the actions to connect and channel?
So I believe that everyone can channel. You know, I believe everyone has psychic gifts and everyone has mediumistic gifts. It's just that they've been so conditioned out of us from birth that we've forgotten how to use them. And the Pleiadians did say to me a few weeks ago that they are with everyone right now, and they're trying to tap into everyone's consciousness, and they're working with people, you know, and they said it's about us as human beings being open to their communication.
Okay.
So sometimes, like I was saying to you about the example of, you know, saying that the word should needed to be eradicated,
Yeah.
I didn't know where that came from. I just randomly started telling people for about 3 months. And then I read a book which had been written by Barbara Marciniak back in
Right.
the 1970s called Bringers of the Dawn. And as I was reading her book, she channeled that from the Pleiadians in the 70s. Things that I'd been inadvertently saying to people were in this book. So she channeled them, and the exact thing about the word should was in there. And as I was reading this book, I was like, oh my God, I've said that. And so sometimes you might not even realize that you are communicating with these beings or you're channeling them, but it's through the words that you say, through messages that you're potentially given to other people, that's how they're working with you. And for me, it's through meditation and practicing and really trusting that these beings are with us and being open to it as well. My feeling is anyone can channel, anyone can do automatic writing. You know, it's about trusting.
Mm-hmm. What is the energy like in the collective now? Because I feel like, I mean, my experience has been, it just feels like it is just so intense. I feel like there has just been, I know for me personally, professionally, made a massive shift over the last 2 weeks. I was looking back at some of my notes from a meeting that I had 2 weeks ago, and looking back at some of my writing, and part of me was like, who wrote that? It was bold. I mean, I'm usually pretty direct. Speaking my mind isn't something that I have a problem with, but it was very direct. I felt like I was kind of running up against a wall in a particular area. And I felt like the shift was just so clear. And I feel like that knowledge, that wisdom was a download. And I feel like it was not from me. It was not from my conscious mind. It was the universe, like making sure the doors were closed here, was redirected elsewhere. And ever since I realigned, it's been like fireworks. So I'm just curious what's going on in the collective right now energetically. And my experience is in line with what you're seeing on a more collective basis.
Yeah, so I think, yeah, like what you said, the energies are very intense. And similar to yourself, you know, for the last few weeks, I've been thinking about my client's journey and what it looked like. And I was really trying to overanalyze it. I was writing down all these different steps, and I was like, so where do they go from? Where do I take them to? And last Sunday I was sat and I wasn't concentrating on anything or doing anything. And I just started writing and I set out so clearly what my client's journey looked like. And I was like, oh my God, I've got it now. And that was definitely like some sort of download coming through. And we're in Mercury retrograde as well at the minute until the 20th of Feb. And for myself, I'm finding I'm going over old ideas and I'm looking at new ways of bringing the work that I've done out into the open. And it feels as if, for me, for like people who are already in this field, we're preparing the next couple of weeks. It's like we're preparing to have that really solid foundation ready. And I keep saying to people again, I'm like, this is the era of the healers and the therapists and everything else, because I feel as if we're going to be really needed. I feel like there's going to be a massive demand for our services. There's going to be a massive demand for guidance, for people really understanding who they are at a deeper level than what they have done previously and in prior years. And I feel like for ourselves, there's definitely been this sort of, just the last couple of weeks, real clarity about how we're meant to be serving others, how we're meant to be helping others. And even nice stuff coming up for myself as well, around sort of like what relationships look like going forward, into the fifth dimension, into the new world. It's like, and leaving old beliefs behind and really allowing, again, to be curious and exploring what these new possibilities and opportunities are. So then when other people get to this point, it's like, well, this is what we sort of came to, and this is, how we see it. And it feels a bit like we're paving the way, for others. So it's in one way it's really exciting because like there's no path, because this ascension process hasn't been done before. So we're in charge of sort of like creating our own paths to the lives that we want to live and the society that we want to see. And so it is exciting, and there's a bit of like this, it's quite unknown. So there's lots of questions coming up as well, I feel, especially like I said, for people who are already doing this work. But I feel like there's I don't know how to explain it, but I just feel like the next couple of weeks is about creating the foundations, making sure that we know in our hearts who we are, what we're doing, how we're here to help and serve. So when it's really, really needed, and I feel like it will be, that we're ready.
Love it. So what are some things people can do to kind of prepare themselves or get themselves in that mental / energetic state to start to receive messages from other realms if they feel like they're called to do so?
So meditation is the first one, learning to sit. If you're not used to sitting in silence, then I would highly recommend doing it, switching off all devices and just learning to sit even for 5 minutes in that stillness, because what that does is it calms your mind and it allows those thoughts to come through. Sometimes I get downloads when I'm like doing the washing up, when you're in that sort of meditative state where you're doing something like colouring in, for example, if you're colouring in with the kids or painting, you might just get a sudden thought drop into your mind and you're like, oh, wow, why am I thinking that? That's awesome. That's a brilliant idea, So doing meditations can help. I also recommend people starting to maybe play with different external tools. So if you're not used to listening to your intuition or receiving downloads, using tarot cards or oracle cards can help you to tap into your inner knowing and what's going on and those messages. Using crystals, they can often help as well, especially when you're in meditation, just to connect again, whether it's to your spirit guides or to your higher self. And again, writing, I find, even journaling, asking yourself those self-reflecting questions. And sometimes I end up going off on a tangent and I'm channeling before, I'm like, I wanted to journal and to process, but like upstairs I've got other ideas. And they're like, we need you to write this message first, Lindsay. So I'm like, okay. And just allowing, the energies to flow through you and to accept that the messages that you're receiving, and trusting. Again, it comes back to trust, doesn't it? So.
Right. I know you do so many amazing things in this world to bring out the light worker in others. So what are some of the different ways that you share your work? I know you're an award-winning author. You mentioned your YouTube channel. What else do you currently have going on? And what can we expect to see from you going forward?
Yeah. So at the minute I'm halfway through running my first intuitive development circle, which has been really fun, and it's helping people to explore their like develop their own intuition, but also helping them to with their confidence. So like I love Zoom for putting I make people work. I'm like, I said to them at the beginning, I'm like, you're going to be out of your comfort zone because you're going to be in pairs and you're going to be practicing, because it's only through practicing that you're going to see that growth come out. So yeah, so I've got that going on in the minute. I'm busy moving all my online courses into a new space and building a new website.
Mhm.
And they really take people through that journey from going through a dark night of the soul or the spiritual awakening. And it's going to be going all the way through to connecting with the Pleiadians or the Arcturians, to twin flame stuff, to there's just so much stuff that I know I have to share with the world that I know will help them on their own journey. So yeah, my YouTube channel, I've started interviewing. Initially, I started interviewing people about their own spiritual journeys. But I've very much been drawn to people who are standing up and speaking their truths, especially during like this lockdown and everything that's going on.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's where I'm feeling drawn the minute is working with people, or interviewing people about their truths. I'm compiling. Well, I've started writing my third book now, which is more channelings, and I feel as if it's going to be more around how to connect with the Pleiadians and the Arcturians. So people don't, because I think sometimes people have this expectation that ET suddenly going to walk down the street and pop up and be like, oh, hi, but the energies they're not going to do that. So I just feel like it's more reassurance for people about how to connect with different dimensions and different people in different dimensions. And then what was the other thing? There is something else that I had planned, but I can't remember what it is now. There's a lot going on, a lot. So
Super exciting. Have you ever thought about writing a book with the channelings of all the different world leaders?
yeah, so at the minute there's two books on the go. So one of them is the channelings from the Pleiadians and the messages I've been given, and the second one at the minute is voices of the leaders of the past.
Okay, yeah, that's exactly what I was just saying. That's why I asked that. Oh my gosh, I could literally the chapters. Like she has to write this book, and it's already in process.
Yeah, and because I feel like, and this was something that Winston Churchill shared with me, which I thought was really apt. He was saying, when we learn history in schools through the different books, we've been learning stuff from one person's perspective or experience.
Yeah.
Whereas like to be able to communicate with them and ask them questions, you're getting like they're sharing their own perspective, and it's completely different to what we've been taught.
Yeah.
So my feeling is that Winston Churchill came through because he did some not so nice things during the Second World War, and it's like he wants to sort of make amends for that. And now, so he's sharing with me the different reasons why World War II happened, different events that went on, and what went on like behind the scenes, if you like, that has never been publicized or shared anywhere. So it's very interesting. I'm very grateful to him for choosing to share it with me. So yeah.
I'm super excited to check out your work, and I look forward to that book in particular. So if people would like to get in contact with you directly or check out YouTube, what's the best way for them to do that?
So my website is www.lindsaybanks.uk, and I'm on YouTube, Lindsay Banks, and Instagram and Twitter at LindsayBanks111.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that and for being here today. It's been delightful having you as a guest.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Pam. I've really appreciated it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. And to all of our viewers and listeners, I so appreciate you. As you well know by now, I believe that time is a choice. And I am grateful that you have carved time out of your day to be here and listen to everything Lindsay has had to share. So once again, would love to have you join my Facebook group, liveauthentically.today/FB. And have a great day, everyone. Bye.